step forward.
Welcome to the Then Now podcast. I'm your co-host C Diesel. To let the man have Lelouch V. To the right of me, I have Professor E King of the Comics, Ethan Murphy. How are y'all doing today, fellas?
I'm good.
Oh shit, it's Luke.
Goodbye. But I just had a hyper revelation. I realized why I like our intro so much. Because it sounds like the intro to Yu Yu Hakusho if the notes are right. Like that's what
You said this before, and I'm not going to allow you to do it now. Stop disrespecting that fucking song. Let's not do that.
Great. Smile Bomb is a classic, okay? But though it was very off key.
It's off. It's literally off. There's no, that's the definition of off key. It's like very much. And at the very end, Otis, if you get a chance, go ahead and sing that very end note that she sings at the end right there. As they're all falling down.
I'm not doing this today. Anyway, guys, how y'all doing, fellas? Y'all doing good?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. And you know why I'm great, Dev? I spent the last 10 hours with you, basically. So yeah, I'm doing real good.
Shit, was that 10 hours? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be 10. I play it a lot. We'll get into that. Real quick before we get into that, though, just a PSA. If you are going to put on a comedy show and you have some comics, make sure that you don't have literally 18 comics where only 9 of them know how to do stand-up and then charge full price for admission and start your show 40 minutes late on a Saturday night when people are trying to have a life. Do the whole, the more you know.
This guy stinks!
It's a representation of Ethan in the audience.
Everyone in the audience. Here was the thing. It was such a bad. We got to move on. But the show got so bad and went on for so long that the damn host of the show, 2.5 hours in, by the way, left. I saw her put on her purse, pick up her coat, and walk out the door. And she was the host of the show. I was like, God damn.
LeBron meme walking out on the interview.
Oh, yeah. God. Have you seen that, Ethan? Where it's like Kimmy puts his glasses on? Oh, God, that's hilarious. Anyway.
My bad.
Getting into the main topic of the day, obviously, we're going to start with one of the bigger anime drops to drop out of the large group that did drop this season, being Chainsaw Man. Obviously, a highly anticipated show. A lot of people are looking forward to it. I myself was looking forward to it ever since our interview with the Masked Man. When he brought that up, I looked into it. It's great. We'll kick it off with Otis, since you're more of the manga connoisseur. You probably read. I think you read this before any of us did. I don't know if Ethan read it at all. I know I did it recently.
I read some too.
But how do you feel about the show so far in the first few episodes, Otis?
Yeah, so I mean, this being another one the manga that I read before the anime came out, I have like a different kind of view on it. Like usually I'm watching something to see like, okay, is it good? Like seeing what things I can pick up. Mm-hmm. This is more like a weird relationship. Like you better did it right. Like you I know how this is. I know how it's supposed to go. You better did that shit right. And Chainsaw Man in the first 2 episodes has done it right. It's pretty much shot for shot from the manga.
Verbatim. Yeah.
I'm not in love with Denji's voice actor, but I can live with it. Just seeing him in I can't remember his name with the nail on his back.
With a nail on his back?
Nail on his back.
Fuck.
Come on, Aki.
He's on Aki.
Yeah, Aki. Yeah.
Yeah, like seeing him in Denji's relationship, it made sense. It felt exactly how I thought it should. So I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I mean, it literally is. So I think this is one of the few times where I read a manga before Otis did. I didn't finish it. I literally have a very weird thing where I will stop dead in my tracks reading it and something if I know they're doing an anime adaptation, because I'd rather see it that way and I have something spoiled for me. Mm-hmm. But I was reading this as it came out. Back in the day, Super Eye Patch Wolf mentioned how there's this new book coming out that was really good and really enjoyed it. And so I went ahead and started reading it. I was like, holy shit. So I read it as it was coming out. Back in the day, I got through the Gunman, not the Gun Devil. I got into it pretty far. But yeah, the first 2 episodes are great, and they really are literal, exact verbatim, almost shot for shot adaptation, translations. However, they do go 2 or 3 steps further as far as having fun with changing the medium. As far as they can add some life to it, they can actually have it. For one, there's music that makes sense for it. The actual graphics or how the content, the viscera and things of that nature looks really graphic. It looks really good. And just I know Otis mentioned the voice acting from Denji. However, it's pretty much you can't contest his spoiler alert. There's a scene where Denji has to suffer something pretty horrific, and the screaming that this voice actor did for it. We've all seen all kinds of anime. We've all seen subs and dubs. His screaming during this scene is like top notch. Mm-hmm. His scream was on par with my scream last night watching that comedy show for 3 hours. So yeah, I definitely dig this. I know where it's heading coming up, especially with the next couple episodes. It's really going to, with the character they infuse power, it's going to get really, really interesting, really dramatic in some senses too.
Batman.
The Bat Double. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, just to sum this show up in 2 words, I'd have to go with on the lines of
emotional damage.
Because this show is dark and fucked up, which there's a lot of content like that, which it feels like a lot of content recently that's been popular has been like that, where it's been really dark and just grim, which we have some things in form of levity, but I digress. It's been really dark. And with this show, it takes darkness and kind of like takes it to the extreme in regards to like how bad one person's life can truly be. Even more so as the story goes along. This is one of the few anime where I actually read the manga before I watched it, because I was just so hyped up about it for so long. Because again, when we did the interview with the Masked Man, he mentioned it. I looked into it a little bit, and I was like, "This shit looks dope." Because even he did a couple videos on it, and I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna do something out of the norm of the Diesel, and I'm gonna go ahead and read the manga and get a feel for this show." And I do not regret that at all, because the manga was excellent. And like Otis said, this has been a shot for shot, essentially from the manga over to the anime, and I'm really enjoying it. Now there are some spotty portions of CGI where it seems like anime is starting to kind of go towards that direction because it's cheaper and they can mass produce it, I guess. Or it's easier to animate and probably pay people.
Cardi. Yes, Eagles, 6-0. That's all I had to say.
You're Philly. I thought you're from Virginia.
Yeah, but he's
I grew up outside of Philly until I was about 8 years old. Then moved to then moved to Virginia. But anyways, I made it.
Anyway, no, you're good. It's dope. I'm enjoying it. There's some spotty stuff, but that's you could say with any show in general. It's nothing that's too crazy. And even then, the spotty moments were really early on, so it didn't overload all the great stuff that happened. So I'm excited about the show so far. Yeah,
I think there's. I mean, cut you off. Oh, we gonna say something? Okay. The thing about it is, this show, it opens. You could almost, even if the first episode or the first issue of the manga was just one thing, it would be an amazing short film. Period. It'd be an amazing short film. How well it's done. But because what it actually does a really good job is that the first episode and the first manga shows you the balance of the drama along with some of the levity and also the graphic nature. Like you said, it's very dark. It's not always dark. Also, there's lots of the parts of the manga where it's almost like downtime as far as them kind of not slice of life necessarily, but seeing the characters interact with each other as people, which is really enjoyable too. So yeah, it does have very, very dark, dismal, over the top graphic moments, but there are lots of moments of heart, lots of moments of bizarre, like human connections too. There's a part coming up pretty soon too, or fairly soon, with Denji and his boss, where it's like, I remember when I read that first, I was like, "Wow, that's pretty." I mean, yeah, I know it but it does have it does have a heart. It does have heart too. So it's not just one shade that you're getting from the story. That's why the story's become so popular. It has so many different things to it.
Right. It's like they find a way. I mean, Denji's life is shitty, right? And they still find ways to make you laugh within how dark that world is. Like that world is really fucked up. Like they have, like, people die in droves on the regular here. Like, yeah, as bad as Gotham is, like, I'd probably still rather live there than anywhere near this, right? Like,
yeah.
But but going into what Charlie said before, like I mean, yeah, there has been a lot of dark content out, and the dark content has been pretty good. And I just think that's just some people see it as like this is like making people more negative. I see it as like oh, things could be really worse because I could live here, like what I'm saying, like but I don't know. I've really been enjoying it. The where the manga is now, I can't wait for them to eventually get there to the animation. And that's just the overall feeling I have towards the show. I just want to see certain moments be animated, and I'm really looking forward to a chance to see it.
Yeah, the animation, because I mean the fight, the animation, the manga, I do compare it kind of to Berserk as far as when he's swinging his chainsaws around. It's similar to when Guts is swinging around the Dragon Slayer blade, but the anime actually really doubles down as far as seeing how he swings it around. Also, the actual sound effects. You don't hear any sound effects when you're reading the manga. The sound effects in the actual of the chain hitting, cutting people in half, and the blood. It just takes up another level, which is why I love animation so much. Now, real quick, we do have to, since Cardi mentioned the intro is fire, we forgot to play our intro for animation. I know Otis and Charlie hate it with a vehement passion, but I got to play it. Whether or not they want me to, it's going to come. Where did I put it? Unless they erase it. Did they erase it? They haven't erased it, which I wouldn't blame them for doing.
God, I was not me.
I did not erase it.
I didn't touch shit. I didn't touch anything.
If it's gone, it's gone. I can't do anything about it now. But I think it's gone. But that's okay.
You put it back in there if you still have the file.
I'll put it in. I'll put it in later.
Wait,
I'll put
is
it
it not there?
It's not here, but I'll put it in. I'll put it in now so we can get it though.
Jesus Christ! But
That's
yeah,
hilarious.
while he's doing that, to hold off while he's doing that, I will say, can I play off the points you guys talked about with the forms of levity within this dark world? It does an amazing job of making you feel an attachment to characters just to put them through the ringer. And I think that's, again, when it comes to dark content, I think that's where dark content shines. In a dark world, if you can find some form of levity and for lack of a better term, the friendship, if we want to get into the power of friendship at all, it's kind of similar. Like if you were to take the fairy tale level of like friendship and put it in like the dark ass world of like Attack on Titan, and then whenever the friends are having a good time or you think they're enjoying themselves, they literally have the worst possible moment. That to me is what it feels like these shows are kind of doing, in the sense of giving you this like pure bond and then just throwing that shit through the ringer the moment that you think things are better.
Yeah.
And so they're finally learning from what the Gundam series has been doing since it started. Like that's just what they do.
Fair enough. You and Gundam. You and Gundam. I would have gone somewhat more like One Piece, just in the idea that One Piece, a big part of Oda's mantra is having how it's all about the groups and the friendship and everything else. And obviously, because it's such a huge series and IP, I feel other creators that are coming afterwards are realizing, yeah, we can do that. Actually, having the camaraderie can be an element of the story too. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say that that's exactly what he was trying to do, the creator of Chainsaw Man, but it's somewhat in the consciousness now of manga can to do something like that, to make sure your characters matter. If they have a team, that they actually are likable in and of themselves. So real quick, I'm gonna play the intro because I built it up. I'm gonna play it. We can move on and have our lives and everything. All right, there we go.
I don't know why that last part to me, I thought it was Captain Planet, like the people coming to get the Captain.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's technically Voltron, but yeah, it's might as well be Captain Planet.
Same shit.
Same.
Yes. I don't disrespect it like that, but again, I love Captain Planet for whatever reason. Don't ask me why. I need to dive into that at some point. Hey, bro. We like that.
That's literally what it is. Yeah. But I didn't mean to interrupt the whole flow and everything with that. But
no, you're good. You're good. You're good.
I would never say no to Trap Goku. Like, come on, man.
Trap Goku. I would pay so much money to see Goku and like Vegeta and all of them like roll up into a club and just like
moving sensu beans and Lolo.
Yeah.
Bro, you know, oh man, we'll get into that. You imagine like sensu beans like being moved like Coke.
Yes,
got the beans on me, boy.
Beans. Oh my god, things I would do with the sensu bean. But even just real quick talking about the teams and stuff, even with like in DBZ, the Z Fighters.
Oh, I'm sorry. I won't go let that.
I guess that makes sense.
What things are you gonna do with a sensu bean besides eating?
Look, I can't copy somebody with a sensu bean and bring them back to my place. What I mean is, I would get hype in a club and go off in this episode now. We already demonetized twice. What's the difference at this point?
Got a lace sensu bean.
A lace sensu. What are you like? Will it even work after you eat the sensu bean?
No.
Maybe ecstasy lace sensu bean.
No. It's kind of because it negates.
I just said Nick. I was like, yo. I was like, damn, my man.
Yeah, nigga, it negates it.
It's not false, nigga. It negates it. It's part of all the same things. This is off the rails. Off the rails. I don't even know where the rails are anymore.
Oh, let's try to rate it
back.
back.
Jesus Chainsaw Man.
Right.
Chainsaw Man.
Oh yes, the show's great. I'm enjoying it really. Did you have a point that you want to get into, Otis?
No, I was just gonna say, it's really good. If you have not seen it yet, I highly recommend it.
Mm.
And it's gonna have a good season. It's a great season of anime in general.
Even for my friends that aren't like they like anime, but they're not the biggest anime enthusiasts. I'll be like, hey, all right, this is probably the one that I know you would like. I recommend to certain friends that have interest in darker content. And my homegirl, she loved it. Like she's been binge watching that show with her and her boyfriend, and they've been enjoying it.
Binge watched 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I guess that's one thing too, is how anime is evolving. I know you mentioned a couple of episodes ago, Dev, how you would recommend as a gateway anime the Cyberpunk. I'm sorry. Yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 Edge Runners. You recommend that? I don't think that would be as easy to get into, but for some folks, for younger people, it might work. With Chainsaw Man, I definitely, with the first episode, there are lots of elements that people could get into for that because it is very much a touching story of basically a boy and his dog. However, it still gets weird at the end, but I get it. If you're trying to, I probably would show this to someone who may not be an anime fan necessarily, but if they are a fan of good storytelling, especially if they do some horror or whatnot, I would say this is probably a really good show to show. Like I would show this to friend of the show, Eric. Well, he watches anime a little bit, but I would show this to people. I would, yeah.
To get into that point, though, it's something I thought about ever since we had that conversation. I wanted to get into in regards to generational gaps. I feel like around people around my age group, maybe like within a year or two older than me, maybe 3, I feel like we grew up with darker content. Like when you go, because I had a conversation with my stepfather the other day. He's approaching his early 40s, like mid 30s. And he was talking about like all the cartoons he grew up watching, and like DuckTales and all. And I was looking, I'm like, damn, all those cartoons are just really happy-go-lucky, and they're kind of like anthology series. They didn't really have too much depth to them. And then I thought about where I grew up with the late 90s, early 2000s anime and cartoons that I was watching. They were all dark as shit, or they had like adult-themed plot lines, whether it be the Justice League stuff, the Teen Titans. All those cartoons were just really dark. So I feel like people within my age demographic are just used to darker content versus someone maybe a little bit older. And even when you look at go ahead.
I have to push back pretty hard against that, only from this standpoint of, you mentioned the dark content you mentioned was Teen Titans or Justice League or Young Justice. Fair. Even Korra and Avatar there, but I wouldn't say they're dark as much as more adult. Growing up, because I think your stepfather is around my age. I think I'm older than him because I'm older than everybody.
You're older by a little bit.
I'm a little bit older than him. I grew up in the era of Don Bluth. I know Otis knows Don Bluth. That's Secret of Nim. That's Land Before Time. That's American Tail. That's also getting into like Never-Ending Story, where these are things where kids' movies, specifically kids' content had bodies body count.
Mhm.
What's that one called, Otis, where it has the rabbits, but it's like rated R almost, the animated rabbit story. Can't remember. I had to look it up again, but it's there. These are animated things that were in the early '80s or mid '80s or what have you that I grew up in my era watching, and they
Mhm.
were aggressively dark. And the theme was, like Don Bluth once said, you can pretty much show a kid anything as long as it has a happy ending. And he tried to prove it over and over again. There's a movie he made called "No Dog," All Dogs Go to Heaven. He proved this by showing dogs go to
Yeah.
hell in the movie. So it's like,
Yeah.
God damn. So I do think there
That
was
was
a
on
time.
shit as a kid too.
Bro, I had it on DVD, boy. I was
I had it
fired.
on VHS.
And it was great. It was great. I think as going closer to Otis's and especially Dev's generation, they feel things like for like Adventure Time, where they have adult themes or older themes in them, but they still aren't trying to go horror-esque in a sense. They don't have body counts as much. So it's there is dark material definitely coming out when you were a kid. Definitely is, but it's different. I think it's just the way
Ren
we
and
approach it.
Stimpy.
The question I have was a lot of with those things you mentioned because I don't know. I'm curious. What were the time slots those were broadcasted in? Were they broadcasted during like those early morning times when kids
These
were
are
up watching
movies.
stuff? These are
They were
movies.
movies.
Okay.
Yeah, these weren't shows as much. They were actual movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Animated.
The only reason I'm talking about, I think mine, I think we're a little bit darker is due to the fact all those things I talked about, they were like aired at like the peak times that kids would watch cartoons on early morning Saturday stuff versus when, again, my stepdad was watching DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, all those things were, again, they were prime, maybe not prime time, but they were like the things that were pushed to kids in the optimal time slots that kids would watch that stuff.
Well, there is that Disney afternoon. So Darkwing Duck, DuckTales, Gummy Bears, all that kind of stuff. Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, yes. But that's Disney. Don't forget, we also grew up in there of Transformers, G.I. Joe, Thundercats. Dudes picking up heavy-ass weapons to kill other dudes. Granted, they all had horrible glaucoma and could hit a side of a barn, but they were all trying to kill each other aggressively. So it's Star Wars. Yeah. So there was still the content was there where they were trying to actually be violent as shit. But it was so I think I know like now parents are the censorship. There was an era where censorship just went crazy. They were doing everything they could to try and censor everything. Ninja Turtles is a good benchmark across the board. When Turtles first came out in the 80s, if y'all remember, they had changed the Foot Clan to make them metal so they could use the weapons against them. Right. As it got closer towards the 90s or in the 90s, they changed it so that Michelangelo didn't even have his nunchucks anymore. He had like a rope with like a weight at the end of it because they were saying, oh, the weapons are too dangerous. And oftentimes Raphael and Leonardo, because they had metallic weapons, they never even use them. They just keep them always sheathed. So it's censorship changed things too. And I think, like you mentioned, Dev, now as you're getting closer to this era, like where you were born, like, or a little afterwards in the 2000s, they have more creative writers doing more creative storytelling. So it's not necessarily violent, but it can have different types of ideas that are being communicated.
I didn't even mean this. Oh, go ahead. Oh, my bad.
I was gonna just go ahead and be there in between here because I mean, Charlie says that there was always the content is darker then. He says the content was dark. It just wasn't seen. I'll be in the middle. It's just say the content always existed. It's just now it's the meta. Now it is the darker content is what the mainstream is looking for. As before, they wanted the happy-go-lucky, yay, we're best friends and we did it. Now people are looking for more realistic stories, more relatable, because real life isn't always yay, you know. So,
right. Because I will say it's not for me. It wasn't even the violence. When I say dark, it's more so the probably more adult theme is probably the better way to approach it. Because I'm looking at like because for me in my age, at least for people that are really close to my age, our biggest cartoon thing was like the prime time golden era of Cartoon Network, where you had the Johnny Bravos, the Courage the Cowardly Dog, Samurai Jack, Teen Titans, the Justice League stuff. I think was probably like maybe it was a little later, but like all these shows. Plus, when I got even to like my preteens, is when you introduce the Star Wars, the Clone Wars, and things like that. Like everything for me, like cartoon wise, growing up was all adult theme oriented in a sense. Obviously, you had the lighter-hearted cartoons that'd be on more so on Disney probably, and then Disney XD would do more light-hearted, even live action shows like Zeke and Luther. I don't know if you guys ever, if you even know what that is. It's like a random show they had on there, but they would do more of the goofy stuff on there. But Cartoon Network, they had that era where like the Grim, you had a show about the Grim Reaper and two kids. Like a Jamaican Grim Reaper, like
Billy and Mandy is a top tier show.
That was funny. Yeah, it was hilarious. It was hilarious.
Even Codename Kids Next Door was dark to an extent and had adult themes with like kids never wanting to grow up. Like that, like for me, that was the golden era of cartoons, but all those shows had like adult themes within them, and they were all the popular ones.
Yeah, and I think that did happen over time. They have gotten more and more. They've tried the creators of these shows and cartoons they're my age now pretty much, and they wanted to actually kind of use those same things. They're not worried as much about execs and marketing. They're like, this is a story I want to tell. I'm gonna tell it the way I want to tell it. Basically, I would definitely say Avatar and Korra. Otis and I have championed Korra to pieces. I know Dev likes it too, but Korra is one of the actually has one of the most adult themed stories for a character in a long time. Aang is great, but Korra's journey through those 4 years or 3.5 years is brutal, and so it's that's something that came out even more recently. Another really big show that was around when I was a kid, when I was a pup, was Batman the Animated Series. That show was pure adult theme. If still to this day you watch it, it's like, yeah, this actually makes sense and holds up really, really well. So they've always, like Otis was saying, they've always been really good shows that have had more adult themes. Sometimes you have to seek them out that much harder, but they've always been there and always will be there.
Right. I will say though, I feel like there was that turning point, probably maybe around I'll say around my era again, where that was maybe more so a detriment to the medium. Because you see, like, probably around 2013, 14, maybe 15, where you started to see the phasing out of all those shows that I talked about earlier, because mostly toy sales is probably the biggest thing, or DC being stupid and thinking them dropping a DVD box cassette would outsell more than when you have Netflix, but that's a whole different thing.
It was done by Warner Brothers.
Anyway, but because these shows, like, they were adult oriented and was patting the kids, but I don't know. I'm not gonna say kids aren't buying toys as much, but I don't know why they were so dead set on like these shows producing toy sales specifically, because there are so many of these shows that drop because of toy sales. And then
money.
And you
I
see like
say that though, toy sales are dropping. Kids like tech now. Like kids want a tablet, the same tablet that you want. They want the same video game console that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about something else to think about. I know there's other reasons, but Toys R Us went out of business. There are other factors and other things involved with that too, but it did go out of business.
Yeah. All right, your main medium is toys, and these people aren't buying them like that. And you saw like there's like where they had like shows like Uncle Grandpa, and I think like Mad TV came back where they started, and then they like kidified Teen Titans again and made that. They tried to make everything super child friendly and child oriented. And I think they're starting to come back around now because they're seeing that all these adult animation shows and movies are starting to take off again, even with anime making a big push in the West even more now, where everybody's like a mainstream cool meta thing now, which is I'm still getting used to, because I was used to being called weird about, even in my own house with my little brother thought I was weird for it, even though he's watching the same shit I'm watching, but that's a whole different thing. But not everybody loves anime, and I'm like, I gotta get used to this. Like, I'm glad people are enjoying it, but I think you're starting to see maybe like a turning back of it, but there was a big time for like almost a solid decade where cartoons went from, maybe it's a continuous, maybe it'll stick now with more adult stuff, but it feels like it's went to a phase of where it was primetime stuff was childlike or more child friendly, then the primetime stuff was more adult oriented, and now again kid friendly again in like the 2015 around that time, and now I feel like it's taking another turn more recently where all the animation is just like either anime based, where everything's like in an anime style, or it's just darker.
I mean, it's all about money at the end of the day. Right now, anime is more popular than the American cartoons. Like, kids want Naruto toys. They want, the Attack on Titan stuff. They're not looking for what, like, as great as Infinity Train was. How many kids have you seen talk about that?
Almost none. And think about this too. Like you mentioned, Attack on Titan, AOT is like the single. I know obviously One Piece is the biggest manga and anime, but like AOT is a household entity. My parents have heard of Attack on Titan. I saw some random dating reality show, whatever. When they met, and one of the girls mentioned it on there, and she didn't even know what it was, but it's like it's that ubiquitous. So, and think about how overwhelmingly dark that series is. Death Note, amazing series. Think about how dark that is. So it's like the darkest ones, but like Otis was saying, though, it's not just about just being dark as it is, as much as it is just trying to have different themes that people can relate to these days, because the world is a lot more nuanced. So the shows and content we digest is going to be more nuanced. Invincible is a show that wouldn't have come out years ago. The Boys wouldn't have come out years ago, but these are shows that you have to have some awareness, not saying necessarily a satire, but have some awareness of what you're presenting to people to get them to relate to it at all.
So a question I would pose then, because we know companies are doing this because, again, money makes the world go round, but we also know these companies are going to make products that they think people are going to buy. What is it, do you think, that with maybe culturally is shifting to where people are at least now gravitating towards this kind of content more? I think Otis kind of got into it a little bit with everything being happy-go-lucky. But why do you think that like not just the fan of the medium like we would be, but like the casual person, what is drawing them into this darker adult themed content versus other stuff?
Well, I mean, I think there's one big thing that kind of sparked this almost renaissance, and that's the pandemic.
I was going to say the same thing.
Everyone had time to sit down and start watching it, and it was like, oh, this is cool. And you know what? My kid likes this thing too. Now we're both fans of it. Now we're both gonna buy products of it. Like it all comes back around to money, and people realize that there's a lot of money in animation, and people are now going to try to push in that direction more because it makes them more money.
Yeah. And I was going to mention the pandemic, but I'll take it a step further from what Otis is saying. The pandemic also made people want to, quote unquote, fight back. And what does anime do, especially obviously in the shonens? The characters are oftentimes fighting back against impossible situations, impossible odds, impossible opponents. And it's kind of like it's fun to watch. You can almost relate to that. The Lord of the Rings films were really popular because you're watching characters, especially hobbits, who had no business trying to take on an impossible entity, fight back against it, essentially. And it worked really well. The Marvel movies, the MCU, worked because it was actually seeing people, Tony Stark and all of them trying to fight a system that, as best they could. And as we gotten further along with that anime, you have characters in a more nuanced way. They're not just black and white, but you're seeing characters fight back against things they don't believe in or things they want to change in some capacity. So, yeah.
It's funny, just to get philosophical for a tight bit for a second. It's really interesting how in just human history, like in times of the most strife and struggle and pain is when the most innovation and like productive things are made. Rather you look at like the World Wars and how much technology was like ushered in from that, or even just this pandemic recently, you see just an uptick of like entrepreneurship, of remote jobs being a thing, and just people are doing more of a depending on the situation, they're doing more of a due diligence to find information versus just take in the information that they've been given to them. People question things a lot more.
If you see the flow charts of the not flow chart, but the graphs of how many independent businesses that have been opened since the pandemic, it's like it's skyrocketed. Yeah,
so much more game going out there.
It's much more game.
Podcast alone, like I know we were probably one of the ones that kind of were burdened from that, but they're like along with us and like a million other of our cohorts, they're just everybody and their auntie has a podcast now about something. So
literally aunties. They're little aunties with podcasts. Yeah.
Which I think is good for the medium because it gives more attention to it, but it does make it a sense of where it's a lot more competitive now. You have to stand out from other people and make sure your conversations they don't always have to be productive to be popular. Obviously, we see that, but it needs to be of some sort of substance to draw people in to want to indulge in your dialogue.
Sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that completely. There's still videos going viral of people just looking at cats.
That's the most viral is cat videos. I mean, good God.
As far as longevity,
content that gets people attention, and also once you get that attention, you're doing something quality to maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
or at least something that they enjoy to maintain, I should say.
Right, and then also the creators should enjoy what they're doing too. Why we do what we do here is because the three of us already, even if we were recording this, we would still do this. We would still have this conversation. We do all the time, anyways. But one thing I want to say real quick, Dev, and in response to what you were saying, there's a great line from again the end of the first season of Korra, where Aang says to Korra, it's only when we're at our lowest points that we're open to the greatest amount of change. So I think that's kind of the idea is during the pandemic, we all hit rock bottom in some capacity. And we were willing to try to do something different, something new to actually find light, to actually push ourselves forward to keep going. We wanted some new cause, new purpose, essentially. And then maybe the anime, in some sense, like Otis was saying, is something new, something different, something fun and exciting that people haven't experienced. So it's like, yeah, let's try this. Let's do this.
Right. Well, guys, to transition into another topic that we're happy to share with you guys. We recently had a new game that came out recently, being that of Gotham Knights. Me and Ethan have been able to get our hands on it and have some experience with it. But before we get into, I guess, like an impromptu first thoughts on it, I'm going to bring up some gameplay that we recently had of us both going through a mission together. Give me 1 sec.
Looking forward to seeing this.
Oh, yeah. You'll be in there with us soon enough.
Yeah, this is a broke boy this week.
All right. So this essentially is gameplay from a mission we recently did that takes place a little bit further in the game. Kind of a Harley Quinn based mission and storyline going on. This is from my perspective, me being Batgirl. Ethan with me is using Tim Drake Robin.
Yes,
and we're kind of teaming up going through this thing. So one of the first things I will say that me and Ethan have talked about while we were playing through the game that needs to be said is this is not an Arkham game. Me being a huge fan of the Arkham series, it took me a second to kind of adjust to realizing, hey, this isn't an Arkham game. Like the things we do within this game are similar in style and in vision to what Arkham did, obviously with some of the combat stuff and just the aesthetic of it. But it does have a lot more RPG elements to it. It does have just different voice actors and a different feel than the traditional Arkham game. Obviously, that being more based on the animated series stuff with Bruce Timm and all those guys.
Yes.
Ethan, if you could like pick one of the more standout things that stood out to you when you first booted up the game, what would you say that would be?
I probably say what you said as far as the RPG elements. The game very much is, even the fact that there are several different nights. Like, I mean, in the Arkham series, I think all of them potentially, it takes place over the course of like one night or maybe like 1.5 days or something like that. This series can take place over months. I'm at day like I think 17 or 18 now on my game. So after you do several things, you go back to the Belfry and actually can build new gear. You actually get to talk to your teammates about different things that are happening. You find more clues. It is meant to be taking place over. This is more or less like a series as opposed to a movie. So it's that difference was the first thing I noticed.
Mm-hmm. Otis, do you have any like questions in particular about the game that you want us to answer for us?
Not necessarily. I'm more so watching to see what to expect from the game. I mean, I didn't know that there were as many RPG elements in there, but I mean, I think that's just kind of the direction that gaming is going as a whole right now, just because pretty much everything has that. Everything's going more RPG, more MMO. They want the more immersive experience because I think they're seeing that people play those games longer. So I think it's cool to see that introduced into a DC theme. I'm just wondering to see how exactly it turns out. Like how much are they dropping gear in there? Like, is it like Destro that literally just answered my question right there? I'm guessing.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a looter shooter per se, Dev. Like, you know, but what happens though, as you're fighting dudes, they will drop stuff, and the thing is, you get those materials to go back to your place, and either they drop a blueprint so you can craft a new kind of like what Dev is wearing now. His Batgirl suit, it's like the third or fourth one. It's not the one that you start off with, and you can build and customize it as you see fit. And then you can also put mods in there. You got to get these different mods, and you can put mods in there that can do different things with your suit too. And also, there's aesthetics or cosmetics, which I know you love. So you can actually have it that, like my Robin character that you see right there, I'm actually wearing, it's essentially like a Court of Owls outfit, but on that I modified how the gloves looked and how the cowl looked on it. So it's not the standard setup. And then also the staff, the actual weapon I have, my bow staff has a fire mod on it. So when I hit cats, it caused them light up on fire. And I modded it up that much more. So the one I have now, it's at like 52% elemental effect buildup. So if I hit guys like twice, they catch on fire basically. It's almost broken. But it's very much like if you take the time to learn the elements of the RPG, it can really work in your favor. Now, it is a bit rough with the tutorial on how to do these things, but as you figure it out, it gets a lot more fun.
All right. And I will say too, in regards to your question as far as being like Destiny, it is in a sense, but what makes it different from most looter shooters is that it encourages you to build lower level gear because your cosmetics are in sets and you need to pretty much collect each part of that set to have that full transmog, which is pretty much like the skin for it. So even if you have a costume that looks good to you and it's a lower level than what you have now, you're still encouraged to build it and have it in your inventory just so you can unlock that costume later on. So if you don't like the way your gear looks, but it's the gear, like the property setup that you want, you can still get that good looking thing you wanted, that good looking piece of gear or costume you wanted to put on top of that pretty much. So they do encourage that. It's nothing's really wasted in this.
Yeah, I think I wish they would have did in Avengers, got you.
I feel like they might have taken a few notes from Avengers as far as like how to really incorporate the right way to get the cosmetics and stuff on characters without having to go through 17, 18 hoops to get them.
And I will say, like Avengers, one of the better things they took from that game is that they made sure each of these characters feel drastically different from the rest.
Drastically different.
Like they don't play the same. Like initially, like again, I think the only other person I played with and like as far as combat with is Jason Todd. I went just to kind of see what he was like, and it was weird after playing with Batgirl for so long to kind of adapt to his combos and his style. But that's another thing too we'll get into. We both talked about in regards to the combat. You can get button mashy with it if you want to, but the game incentivizes you to make sure you're more precise and calculated in what combos or how you attack a certain person. Because if you build up momentum it's not the free flow combat from Arkham, but it doesn't want you to build up momentum through combat by being selective about your combos, and that in turn gives you your momentum abilities back faster, which in the right hand corner of the screen, it's like kind of like special combos, special moves, as well as it also making you do more damage and faster attacks as time goes on as you're building up that momentum.
And the momentum abilities, as Dale was talking about, can get almost broken depending on what you do. Like for Batgirl, I use Batgirl right now. I use Batgirl very briefly because I love Barbara Gordon, but I use her a little bit. There's a move she has where she will, it's like crowd control, where she'll jump in the air and throw like 30 yellow batarangs down to hit the whole group around her. And you can actually like take out an entire room with one move using that, something like that. So the game also, but you have to unlock the momentum abilities, and the way you unlock those is by doing challenges in the game. It's not just by experience points, by playing over and over again. So you have to pay attention to the challenges and do those. So again, the game rewards you for being, paying attention to what's going on and doing them properly. And you see Dev right now as he's doing these combos. You have to, if you hit the square button or the attack button at the right time, each time you hit somebody, it hurts them that much more, and it builds that much more momentum. So it's a game that rewards you for paying attention to what's going on, as opposed to just being just kind of bashing your way through it, essentially.
So this raises a very important question that I have. You say you played a little bit of Jason Todd, right, Charlie? Can you put silencers on those pistols?
Oh no, I don't know yet, because see, there are for each of the weapons that you have. So you have a melee and a ranged attack weapon, and you have gear for each one of those. There is one of the gear sets that say stealth on them, and I'm assuming they have stealth elements. And one thing I noticed with him in particular, when you switch between his different guns or different ranged weapons, or I think the melee, the guns have a different look to them. Like one looks like a hand cannon versus different types of guns. So I want to assume that his stealth gun or his stealth weapon is a silence weapon, is what I would assume. So I don't know for a fact, but that'd be my guess.
I'm hoping that he gets a solid snake type dart gun. I need that in my life. I need it. But if he doesn't, I'll find ways to at least shoot people eventually. I'll figure it out. I'll just make sure it's the last person that's got to be caught to shoot him. I'm going to shoot people.
That's going to happen.
There's a low-hanging Chicago fruit joke there that I want to make, but I'm not going to do it.
all Chicago jokes are low-hanging fruit.
Oh, man. Oh, what were you about to say, though?
No, it wasn't, because Otis said the last one. It reminded me of the fact that, which may happen here, but a big part of this game, too, is the game doesn't just happen. You have to put in effort to uncover it. So where we are right now, we had to literally hunt down criminals in the streets and interrogate the right criminals in groups to get enough information to figure out where we need to go next. So you have to actually scan. You have to scan people, figure out who actually is an informant, then beat them up enough, but then not kill them, and then actually interrogate them properly. So it's again, it does feel more like a detective because it is a big sprawling city that you're taking on, and you have to kind of span the entire city to find certain people to do certain things. It encourages you just to play it and just get lost more or immersed more in the world, which I enjoy.
Got you. So you do regular police work, but less people die in the process. Got it.
I mean, that's a very low bar, but yes, extremely low bar.
Before we get into the open world aspect, which I do want to get into, I will say one of the lacking areas of the game that I feel that doesn't hold up to the Arkham series in a sense, and since again we're going to compare it to that, most people will, is the stealth element. In Arkham, there are a million gadgets you have to kind of help you construct the chessboard that's a stealth map in the way you want, so you can like maneuver to get it done as fast as you want, or even just to play around with enemies and still fear in them. The stealth elements of this are kind of bare bones, where you have the stealth takedowns and certain characters, like I think Tim Drake has an inverted takedown from the Arkham series, but they don't really give you gear to help you maneuver enemies around. Like prime example in the Arkhamverse, they had the Sonic Batarang, which you could throw to kind of draw attention away from where you are to maybe turn the enemy around to get a takedown on them, or you could just throw a Batarang in general to kind of deter attention away. In this game, you don't have those gadgets to help you get that advantage. You kind of just have to wait for enemies to get into the position where you can take them out. And even then, not every situation that you come across can be handled in stealth. Every situation can be handled being guns blazing and just fight people, but there are like specific setups for certain parts of the map or certain parts of missions that are meant to be stealth. And you'll know that because one of the bonuses for that part is to remain undetected. So it'll let you know, or you can pretty much grasp when it's stealth, because enemies will be kind of separated or in an area that has opportunities for you to be hidden behind something versus them all in one open room in a group where it's kind of impossible to pick people off one by one.
Mm-hmm. Very much so, yeah.
Are there any advantages to, like, coordinated stealth stuff? Like, so
countless.
There's 3 guys that got to be taken down in a short span. And are you being like, okay, Charlie, you jump down on this guy, I'm gonna snatch this guy from behind, and we have to quickly take out the third person before he notices? Like
100%. We literally did that in this video. We did it multiple times.
It's the one after this one. It's the one after this one.
Okay. But it 100%. So that also does bring up the bigger element. The single biggest draw to this game should be the actual team element, playing with a friend. And you can also play with someone, just a random person online too, that's playing the game. But I can't overhype or overstate how important or how much of an impact it has playing with someone else. This mission right here, Otis, I've never lied to you, Otis. You're a good man. You're very handsome. And I died 8 times near the end of this mission. I would almost equate it to fighting a boss in a Soulsborne game. That's how hard it was. Because I came in here under level. I came in here at level 8, supposed to be level 10 or higher, and I didn't have the proper gear, and I was by myself. And it was brutal. I was ready to punch a small wombat. I was so angry. But when I played it again with Dev now, you see us, we're tearing through it. It's a completely different thing. So they really, really do want you to play in a team aspect, because they do not lower the amount of enemies because you're by yourself at all. It's the same amount of enemies regardless.
Yeah, they definitely encourage that. Even just to get back into the stealth aspect of it in regards to team coordination, although you don't have a lot of gadgets in order to make it easier, because essentially what they did with each of these characters, they took the Batman from the Arkham series and split him up into portions and put those portions in each one of these people, to where they each, like, their special abilities are something that he kind of had normally. So for, again, Tim Drake, it's the inverted takedown thing. For Barbara, it's hacking drones and hacking technology. And we noticed that while we're going through a mission as a team, like him as Tim Drake, he had his advantages. Me, like, for the gameplay after this one, I think we're going through a Star Labs, and they have like drones or cameras around. He didn't know that I could hack the cameras. So as I'm hacking cameras to where they won't spot him, he's going through and he's taking some people down. So you can make up for that lack of versatility individually through team play, which is why I feel like we both came to the conclusion they're really incentivizing you to play this game with friends and with other people.
Yeah, very much are.
Which that means I hope that we have a lot more team-oriented mission. That's the one thing that I need them not to do that Avengers did not do in regards to bring forth more content that people can play together. You can't introduce all these team aspects in a team-oriented game and then don't drop content that incentivizes people to play it together. Or where I have to just, you know what I mean? That's the thing that I really want for, which we think's coming because there's a part of the game that we spoke about earlier that whenever I was going through the social aspects of inviting him to my game is a part of it called, it's like hero host or heroic something.
Yeah, it's like
it says it's coming soon, which we're guessing is going to be a 4-person combat. Because even the first day when it came to like when you know PlayStation has a thing about people joining a group, it had like the max people in the group was 4 for that moment in time, which I think was probably a glitch early on. Which
it was a glitch.
But we know that's coming, and at some point in the future, where they're going to have 4-person co-op combat, which is the only thing I really want. That was the biggest thing I wanted out of this game, to have it to where me, you, Stan, and Ethan could play this thing together.
Yeah, and that's definitely that's definitely going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. Another thing too that Dev was mentioning, as far as like gadgets with the stealth, you do not have as wide array of gadgets on one player, but overall you're playing 4 different people, and you of course get new gear and you get new moves. So you got to think about it as one Batman had a whole bunch of things. They had a whole massive amount of gadgets and everything he could do. But these are 4 mini Batman, so all of them combined probably do have all the same things, or have as much stuff ultimately as Batman did. So you have to kind of think of it that way. They're broken up in a sense. It doesn't incentivize you to play the game like 4 times or play all 4 different characters, basically.
And that's another thing I will get into in regards to the replayability. This game to me has a lot of replayability because again, like I said, when I switched to Jason Todd, I went through like one cutscene. That was a completely different experience between like the voice actors and what the experience was with him versus with Barbara. I'm definitely going to go through and replay this story with each character just to see like how much different things were changed. I think in this mission in particular, at the end, there's a portion that was specific to Barbara that Ethan didn't even see. And he pointed out that when he did it with Tim by himself, it was something completely different. Yeah. So you get a different feel by playing through each one of these characters, and they paint like throughout the story. Obviously, the big thing is them finding out who's going to take over the mantle of the Bat, and whoever you're playing with, they kind of like the writers paint that person as being the main one. So for me, they're painting Barbara as being like the vocal leader. She's pretty much like organizing everybody and like taking lead on everything. So they're making it seem like she's going to be the next Bat or the next main knight, the Dark Knight of Gotham. Yeah. So that's a dope thing. Everybody gets their just due. Everybody gets their attention, and everything is really there for you to want to play this game and put time into it.
Yeah. Another thing too is because Dev, you were playing with Batgirl. There are side missions exclusive to that character. Like there are Batgirl stories that I didn't have at all as Tim, and there were things that Tim and Alpha were talking about in the Belfry that other characters didn't experience at all. Another thing that's really fun too, Otis, is when you can, if you're with a partner. I played it last night with my friend of mine who's playing as Nightwing. You can do group attacks. So he would do something with Nightwing and actually hold them, and he would hit the button for a group attack, and I would come up with Nightwing, and he would toss the person in the air. As Robin, I would pole vault up there and hit him even further, and then Nightwing would come down and smash him down. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you actually had to like set it up. We had to grab a person or do something to actually initiate it, essentially. And once it's done, you can do a team, like a co-op move on people. So it really is a lot of all the different little nuances the game has, and what keeps you coming back for more and wanting to play it over again.
Now, is all of that story content that you have, like playing through with each character, is that also co-op, or is there some of it that's solo? Like how does that part work?
It's a solo story, but you can be playing the mission with me co-op, but the cutscene's going to be my cutscene. So
yeah, I'll still be there with him as he's going through it. Because essentially, we can, if you want us to join, once you join up, you can be together the entire time. Even if you go back to the Belfry or whatnot, you can always be together. You never have to set up separated again.
To get into one of the main things that I think we need to talk about as far as the atmosphere that the game sets and the environment being Gotham. The one, again, I'm gonna keep comparing it to the Arkham series just because I love that series so much, and it meant a lot to me as far as a gamer and a Batman fan or a DC fan. The one thing that this game does that game didn't do was make the city feel lived in. There are actually civilians around. and people, even when you're driving the bad cycles, like there are other cars on the road you have to maneuver around, so you feel like you're in a city versus a demilitarized zone of the Arkham series.
Right.
Even as well going forward, as far as to like have the police that are within the city, they make it a point to let you know that the police department doesn't have a great relationship with the Bat family anymore. Now that Detective Gordon in this universe is dead and Batman's dead, so they're really standoffish with you and they really want to arrest you. But that being the case, when they try to attack you, you don't get any increased experience points or anything from beating up cops. So you can do it if you want to, but the game highly wants you to, it highly deters you from doing that. Incentivizes you. Thank you. I was looking for the word. From doing that. But
there's a joke I can insert here, but I feel like that's too low hanging fruit. I'll say that for
oh, God.
It's a Chicago joke. Yeah,
no, it's a cop joke.
No.
I already know he's going with it.
If you say a low hanging fruit joke, it's basically a Chicago joke. That's the kind of
yeah, for sure. I will also say on the flip side, one thing that Arkham does really well that this game doesn't do, as far as the atmosphere building, is the NPCs. Although there are more NPCs in this game that are kind of around and they're citizens and they say things, it doesn't really build as much of a world as the Arkham series did. Mm-hmm. Like you could be flying around Arkham City and you would hear prisoners talk about like different things within that world, whether it be Superman or other things. They'd be really specific, or they even talk about history between certain characters, like Two-Face and somebody else having beef and how that started. You hear these little things as you're going throughout the map, and it's building that atmosphere and world building a lot more. Versus this one, they have snippets like that, but it doesn't really build the world as much. It kind of feels like everything's self-contained in Gotham versus building that universe up that you got there, which more so I think is just an issue with the people writing the snippets and lines for the NPCs.
That's definitely fair. I'm sorry, Otis, you guys say something?
No, I was saying anything.
Oh no. The other thing too is that the worlds, like for example, the world of in this game, in the world of Gotham Knights, it is much more sprawling and it has a lot more other people, the other NPCs, as far as not the random civilians that are there, but like spoiler, Lucius Fox is in here, and other context friendly like Renee Montoya, other people for you to hit up and to contact throughout the city to do things with. There are other civilians that want you to help them out with. It's not like doing fetch quest, but as far as actually having challenges that you have to do for these people, and essentially in this world. And you actually don't have. There's lots of things you don't have to do. They're all optional. I was just dealing with a boss, a character in this game. I guess we can spoil who it is. It is Clayface. Clayface's mission overall is optional, completely optional.
That's been spoiled already.
So it's been spoiled. Yeah, they already shown it. But Clayface is completely optional. But it is actually, once you get into the story, it's a very, very fun and engaging story. So it kind of feels like you can do whatever you want in the city. It's up to you how far you want to go with it, essentially.
Right. I'm trying to think of any other points on it. So I'm downloading some other gameplay now from it. Another thing, music. Obviously, from people that watch this show and have watched any videos we have on reviews, music for me in almost any medium is always a big thing for me if you're including it. I think it helps build the world and build the atmosphere. This game has some decent music. Like in certain scenes, they'll have like a version of "I Want Candy" or something like that for one of the boss fights. Yeah, which you wouldn't think it works, but for the setting of where you were and the boss being Harley of who it was, it fit and it worked for that scenario. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends. It's probably more subjective than objective in this part of the review. But for me, I really much more enjoyed the Arkham feel of like the original orchestrated compositions they had, which like they had signature Arkham things that made me feel like, oh, now I'm in an Arkham game. Like this is, I'm in this universe, I'm in this world, and it felt more grandiose. It made you feel more immersed. Versus this one kind of having some different IPs to build a mood. It's more like background music when you're doing something versus having a signature thing that is signature more for like more attention to detail oriented.
I agree. I agree. I think ultimately too, what it is that one thing I do appreciate, and also it's a little heartbreaking, is that this game is trying to be. It is different. This is not Arkham. This is not Batman the Animated Series. Arkham almost at times felt like an extension of Batman the Animated Series because you have Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill up in there. This is like, this is a different era. And they literally kill off Batman, so it's like this is not the same game. It's not the same franchise. You have to accept this is something different.
And that is a huge revelation. So Batman is dead in this. Like, there's no.
We don't know for sure yet. We haven't got that far in the game yet.
We don't know for sure yet, but it's very much like, and it's at the very beginning of the game. It's like, yeah, here you are at his funeral. It's like, well, okay, so it's pretty.
Yeah. If you've watched that animated movie that DC had called Bad Blood, where essentially it was kind of a similar thing where Batman disappeared, it's pretty much like that, to where he's gone, but there's still hope that he's around, and people are trying to like make up for his absence with the different. Which, funny enough, in that one it was 4 people being Batwoman, Damian, Dick, and Luke Wilson or Luke Fox, or like the 4 in that one. But which I'm hoping, that's the one thing I really want on this one that I want them to copy. As far as regards, there are 2 things that I really want them to copy from Avengers, because I know we brought that up a couple times now. It is the DLC characters. I need them to bring in more characters in the Bat family that I really want to see, like Orphan or like Spoiler. I would say Batwoman, but Kate Kane is in the game, and it doesn't seem
she still can be.
She's like the new commissioner, and it feels like that. I don't think they're going to have her as a character, a playable character going forward, unless they do something different with the storyline in the future. But that, as far and as well as comic costumes, like the cosmetics in this game are so dope. I can't wait to them to do. Like, they have some costumes that are based on comic stuff, but they're like in Avengers, they'll literally have like their version of a pretty accurate comic thing, whether it was the Superior Iron Man costume or a certain run of Black Panther. I'd love for them to implement that in this game, where I can have Teen Titans, Red Robin costume. They have something similar to that here, but they don't have like the best things about that. I feel like that made it dope, which like the feather wings, or like the cross chest stuff. They don't have all that stuff there yet. But I think that was a new 52 Red Robin thing from the Teen Titans. But different stuff like that is something I feel like could really make this game go to the next level.
Yeah, it's fair. And I think that it's just a matter of timing. I'll say this is what, day 2 of the game being released, or day 3. It's very very new still. So.
Right, and just if anything, you see all the pros we had about the game on the second day, which I know this game hasn't had really good reviews. A lot of people said this game is mid. A lot of people have had issues with Warner Brothers having pretty much review embargoes essentially on the game, where they'll give out copies of the game for free to people, but they tell them they can't release their reviews on it before a certain time of the game being out, because they didn't want people's reviews to affect the sales of the game, which I kind of get from a business standpoint. But again, that kind of to me shows some insecurity in your product, that you don't really think your game's going to be good enough to sell. But all that being said, I and Ethan genuinely think this is a good game, and I would encourage people, especially if you have a group of homies that you play games with, to get this game and play it with friends, because it was a blast, like playing it with him the whole time.
Yeah, it was a fun experience.
You definitely answered my last question, because, like, I mean, the most popular review of the game I've seen is the IGN review, and they gave it a 5. Do you feel like this is a 5?
First off, I don't fuck with IGN like that, because they are just historically terrible as a reviewing source. They're hella biased, and not at games, movies, everything they do. And it's everything I've seen on IGN that either they hated or liked. I personally, and the vice versa, have like that thing in the opposite outside of the spectrum that they tried to paint something out to be. I know they gave it a 5. I think Game Informer gave it like a 7, and some other credible sources gave it like 5s and 6s, and it's been relatively mid to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's people that probably played it. They haven't played a lot of the game, for one, as well as they played it solo, which the game incentivizes you to play together. And when you're playing this game together, I think this game was meant to be a co-op game that you play with homies.
Yeah. And to answer your question, Otis, do I agree with it? No, I definitely don't. I think it's a strong 8.5. I mean, I may have some bias. That's fair. I've always wanted to play as Tim Drake, really get into it. And I always wanted to play a Batman game with a friend, but also just the environment. I mean, we didn't even talk about the other villains. I mean, this game, you're getting into the Court of Owls, who's never been featured in a Batman game. They're really, I mean, they're not relatively unknown, but they haven't been featured too much in other mediums as the comic books recently. So it's a fun experience. The actual story is much more actual story content that's been in any of the Arkham games. So there are so many pros to this. I feel like the Arkham games do have, and the one was written by Paul Dini. I mean, and this is the same company that made Arkham Origins, which had a good story, I thought. But all I'm saying is just that there are so many pros to this game that I feel like some of the critics are only looking at the negatives. And it's like, I mean, yeah, there are negatives. Of course there are. There are different things I would change, but every game has negatives, and every game has positives, and you should. And I do think it's up to us to choose what we want to play, what we want to experience. And going off IGN, remember they historically gave Last of Us Part 2 a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, and they gave Cyberpunk when it first dropped a 9 out of 10 or 9.5 out of 10, and then they had to recant it because of the whole different PC version and everything. So it's like just trusting what critics say without forming your own opinion on anything may not be the best course of action.
And I will say,
this is obviously IGN is a company that's been giving Call of Duty like 7s and 8s for a long time,
for years.
Like, come on now.
Yeah. So.
And I will say the worst, if I had to pick like the worst 2 things that I don't like about this game, one would be the bugs. Which, that being said, I've only encountered one bug twice. Twice, and it's the same one. It's happened very rarely, and even when I encountered that bug, I was still able to continue on with the game. So it's not a game-breaking bug.
So it's not
2, literally. One, the thing I don't like the most is the traversal. And again, I'm comparing it to Arkham again because again, there's a lot of similar qualities. With Arkham, the traversal would rather be like the cape gliding, seeing the cape gliding in that game versus the one with Batgirls night and day. Like they have the mechanics of you diving and you like gliding, but you don't have one. All the one thing, the traversal is very slow and kind of mundane. I feel like with at least the heroic traversal for each of the characters. Again, I can't speak for all of them per se yet. I can only speak from what I've seen with Batgirl, and I can talk a little bit what I've seen with Tim Drake from Ethan. But with the Batgirl traversal, like that cape is kind of slow. It's fun to use, but you have to like grapple a lot in between to kind of make up ground. Versus in Arkham, you can like shoot across the city on a glider and like just you can not touch the ground if you don't want to. Or I will say,
what you have to factor in though too is that this game does want you to use the motorcycles, the bikes, and the handling of the bikes is very it's good. It's excellent. It works really well, I think. In the Batman games where you can traverse the entire cities gliding, for the first 3 there is no Batmobile. And then once they had the Batmobile in place, they wanted you to use that Batmobile like crazy. So I feel like this game is trying to be more balanced as far as, you can traverse the city, the entire city without having to use the bike, but they do want you to use the bike too.
Right. Which is the happy medium there. My only thing is to speed it up. That'd be the only thing. Like mechanics are solid, the mechanics are good. I just like for the traversal to be faster. Especially with like I've seen Dick Grayson gameplay of like his glider. He has a mechanical like jet glider. It should move a lot faster than what it does. Like just speed up a little bit. Maybe something they can do in the future. Maybe even like Red Hood's jump. I maybe make the jump go a little bit further than what it is. I don't know. And then what I thought was going to happen with Tim Drake's teleportation device with the Watchtower thing. I assumed it'd be something akin to like Kate Bishop's teleportation from Avengers, but it's more so of all right, you zipped up and you're moving your point around where you want to go. And then you teleport there. It's not really a quick thing. The heroic transportation is very much slower than what I would prefer and what I'm used to when it comes to traversing an open world. But like Ethan said, you do have the bike alternative, which you can use. I just like it to be equal on both, where I don't have to use the bike to move really quick around the city.
I mean, they're asking for them to put in a bike, so I'll take it.
One of them was you, Otis East.
Right. But the traversal is fun. I'll give it that. It's fun. It's not fast, but it's fun. Like I enjoy doing it. I enjoy it. Like I'm gonna break down the gameplay and like put it together in some gameplay footage later. It's really dope to see like if Ethan's jumping across rooftops, he sees me flying across somewhere else, and I see him teleporting around. It's cool to see that, and I can only imagine how dope it's gonna be with all 4 people in one thing. So yeah,
we got to go. We are really long here, but. One thing I do appreciate is just how, like Dev mentioned, the bugs, and they really are very, very minimal. For a opening weekend launch of a big game like this, for co-op, for massive co-op, for it to have very minimal bugs is very rare these days. Not just, we always harp on Cyberpunk that Chicago low-hanging fruit that it is, but many games these days do come out with lots of bugs from the jump. This game has, as far as I've seen, very, very, very few bugs. It's been a very enjoyable experience overall.
Do you want to go ahead and rate this or rate the game so far from what we've played, Ethan?
Sure. Like I said, I would go ahead and give it a solid 8.5. I give it a solid 8.5. It was a very, even playing it by myself, and there was a learning curve, obviously, because I had experience in the Arkham games, and a game can be very hard if you do not pay attention to how you build your character, b the levels that the game recommends you will be at before you go to different areas and things like that nature. It can be very, very hard. But if you actually take your time, get into the combat, learn what you're doing, take it seriously, it's a very enjoyable experience. I give it 8.5.
Yeah, for me, and this is coming from an Arkham head. Like again, this is like top 3 franchises of all time for me personally. I'll give the game an 8.5 to possibly a 9 when I play with other characters, because I've only played with my one character and got to customize my one character. And even then, I haven't gotten to get to the end game stuff that makes her play a lot more smoother and a lot more cool stuff going on there. Yeah. So base from like playing it for like 10, 12 hours, I think maybe somewhere around there, it's 8.5 to me, which I think has a possibility to be a 10.
Yeah. All right. I mean, unfortunately, you guys have convinced me to spend money on the Warner Brothers thing, so I'm upset there. But I believe it. I mean, just looking at some of the gameplay that you guys have, it looked pretty fun. And then, like, knowing that it is that 2-man army of 2 type feel, I do appreciate that. So I'll definitely be getting it as soon as I can.
All right. Again, well, everybody, if that's watching it, thank you for tuning in. If you had different feelings on anything we talked about today, again, leave it in the comments. Let us know what you thought. We appreciate all the feedback. We appreciate your support that you have up to this point. We hope for your continued support. Church announcements before we dip out. Upcoming very soon. Echelon G Novels has a lot of stuff coming out. We're getting ready for.
Do you want to go and never mind.
We'll save it. Save the commercial for. I know that's what you wanted to do. Let's save that one for now. Yeah. But we're gonna be getting ready for a drop for Halloween, in which we're gonna be releasing not only all the books that are already on the label digitally, but we're going to be bringing in 2 new exclusive books written by Otis and myself, as far as some of our colleagues, Stan and Jeffrey. We all wrote those and created those stories together. So we're providing the digital medium for anybody that, one, wants to buy the books at a pretty affordable price and read them, but also for people that just don't really care about the physical copies as much. You can buy digital copies now, or coming up very soon. We're going to get that going.
And we'll also have a promo code so you can save money on the merch, and for the holidays, money on the merch, save money on everything overall. So, yeah.
All right. So, again, if you're a fan of comic books and want to read some independent original comics by a Black-owned company, please do so. You guys have any other announcements you guys want to? Well, also, I want to shout out our guys over at Bloody Proof Entertainment. My guy, Craig, or Con Man, has a show called Tapping No Cap, and him and Straw Hat Juicy are doing that. They're doing amazing on. I'm a fan now, and then not even just saying that because I helped them create a lot of stuff. I'm genuinely a fan of their content. So if you guys would head over to Bloody Proof Entertainment on YouTube and give them guys a shout out and tell them I sent you. Tell them Diesel sent you. Yeah. You guys have anything else?
Of course, make sure you tune into the Bait Channel on Tuesdays, Bait Channel After Dark. If you like some nerdy but risky content, that's every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. 7:30-ish, because CP time sometimes kicks in. People got work. It happens. But
no, it's dope. One thing I always want to say real quick is awesome. Thank you. We're at, I know it seems small to most people, but to us it's awesome. We're at 333 subscribers. That's a awesome sign, because 300, the whole 333 is lucky. It's like if you're in Vegas or whatnot, 333. So thank you for making us lucky.
All right. I keep saying it, but we appreciate the support, and we hope for the continued support, because this means a lot to us being content creators. I still don't feel like a content creator quite yet, but yeah, I appreciate all the support up to this point. So again, and we hope for continued support, and share it with your friends. That's all I got for that one. But again, thank you guys for tuning in. This has been another episode of the Then and Out podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Robin.
I'm already paying for HBO Max, and I gotta pay for another piece of Warner Brother content. God damn it! I'm gonna be